The strange thing about some people is that they only come back when they think there's something left to take. That was the thought that crossed my mind the first time I heard what happened between Danielle Brooks and her ex-husband, Logan Mercer. 3 years had passed since the divorce. 3 years of silence. 3 years without a single phone call, holiday card, or even one of those fake texts people send when they suddenly remember you exist. Then, on a gray Thursday morning in early October, Logan showed up at Danielle's front door like he had never left. The air was cool, maybe 58 degrees, and a light breeze pushed fallen leaves across the quiet street. Danielle had been standing in her kitchen making coffee when she noticed a black SUV pull into her driveway. She looked through the window above the sink and immediately recognized the vehicle. Funny how some things stay familiar even after years. She set her coffee mug down and watched 2 men step out. One was Logan. The other carried a leather briefcase. A lawyer. Of course. Danielle didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply dried her hands with a dish towel and walked to the front door. When she opened it, Logan gave her the same confident smile he used to wear during arguments he thought he had already won. "Morning, Danielle," he said. "You look well." She leaned lightly against the doorframe. "That's nice of you to notice after 3 years." The lawyer shifted awkwardly. Logan ignored the comment. "Can we come in?" Danielle glanced at the briefcase. "I'm guessing this isn't a social visit." "No," Logan admitted. "It's business." For a second, nobody spoke. The wind rustled through the trees behind them. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds. Normal life. Yet something about the moment felt heavier than it should have. Danielle stepped aside. "Come in." Logan walked through the doorway like he still belonged there. "I've always thought that tells you a lot about a person. Some people leave a place, but never stop believing they own it." Inside, the house was simple. Clean. Warm. Nothing flashy. Logan looked around as if inspecting an investment property. "You kept it in good shape," he said. Danielle almost laughed. "It's called taking care of things." The lawyer opened his briefcase and spread several documents across the dining table. Logan sat down. Danielle remained standing. "I'll get straight to it," Logan said. "There's an unresolved clause in the property agreement from the divorce." Danielle didn't react. "According to our review, ownership rights were never fully transferred." The lawyer slid papers forward. "Mr. Mercer is requesting possession of the property." Silence filled the room. Logan seemed pleased by it. He probably expected shock. Maybe anger. Maybe tears. Instead, Danielle looked at the papers for only a second before lifting her eyes back to him. Then she smiled. Not a big smile. Not a dramatic one. Just a small, calm smile that appeared for a moment and stayed there. Something changed in Logan's expression immediately. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but I think he felt it too. Because for the first time since arriving, he stopped looking confident. "What's funny?" he asked. Danielle folded her arms. "Nothing." "Then why are you smiling?" She held his gaze another second. "I was just thinking," she said softly. "Some things really do come back around." And for reasons he couldn't explain, that answer seemed to make Logan uncomfortable. Logan did not leave right away. He sat at the dining table with the confidence of a man who believed paperwork mattered more than people. The lawyer quietly organized documents while Danielle stood by the kitchen counter, pouring herself another cup of coffee. She did not offer either man one. That detail seemed to bother Logan more than it should have. Years ago, she would have. Years ago, she would have worried about making everyone comfortable. Back then, Danielle spent most of her days making life easier for other people, especially for Logan. There was a time when nobody would have guessed how their marriage would end. When they first met, Logan was not wealthy. Ambitious, yes. Confident, absolutely. But wealthy? Not even close. He was a sales manager working long hours and chasing bigger opportunities. Danielle worked in operations for a growing logistics company. She was organized, sharp, and usually the person fixing problems nobody else noticed. The funny thing is that some people only see success after it is finished. They never notice who carried the heavy boxes at the beginning. Danielle was the one carrying them. She helped Logan build spreadsheets late at night. She reviewed presentations before meetings. She listened to every business idea he had while sitting on a worn-out couch in their first apartment. Sometimes they stayed awake until 2 in the morning talking about the future. Back then it felt like they were building something together. Then Logan's company took off. Promotions followed. Bigger clients. More money. A larger house. A different group of friends. Somewhere along the way, gratitude slowly disappeared. It happened so gradually that Danielle barely noticed. First came the comments. You worry too much. Then, you should let me handle the financial decisions. Later it became, you do not understand how business works. Eventually, Logan controlled every major account, every investment, every property document. Danielle trusted him. That was her mistake. When the marriage started falling apart, Logan already had everything arranged. The divorce moved quickly. Too quickly. By the time the paperwork was finalized, most of the assets were protected behind agreements she barely understood. She walked away with enough money to survive, but not enough to start over comfortably. At least that was what Logan believed. Sitting across from her now, he seemed to be remembering the same history. You know this could be simple, he said. Danielle looked up from her coffee. Simple for who? Logan leaned back in his chair. There is no reason to drag this out. Danielle smiled faintly. That sounds familiar. The lawyer glanced between them. Logan frowned. He knew exactly what she meant. 3 years earlier, those were the same words he used when ending the marriage. There is no reason to drag this out. Funny how people dislike hearing their own lines repeated back to them. Logan stood and walked toward the living room window. He looked outside at the quiet neighborhood. You always were stubborn. Danielle took a slow sip of coffee. And you always underestimated me. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Logan turned toward her. If you had been paying attention back then, none of this would have happened. Danielle lowered her cup. That sentence hung in the air. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably again. Logan probably thought he had landed a punch. Instead, Danielle almost looked amused. Because what Logan still did not know was that she had been paying attention. Much more attention than he ever realized. Logan stared at Danielle for a few seconds, trying to decide whether she was bluffing or simply being difficult. He had always believed he could read her. That confidence used to be one of his favorite things about himself. The problem was that confidence can turn into blindness when it goes unchecked. The lawyer cleared his throat and tapped one of the documents. Ms. Brooks, if we cannot reach an agreement today, we will proceed through formal channels. Danielle nodded. Then proceed. The answer seemed to catch both men off guard. Logan folded his arms. You are not even going to review the paperwork. I already know what is in it. You have not read it. Danielle smiled slightly. I do not need to. The room fell quiet again. Outside, a delivery truck rolled down the street. Somewhere nearby, a lawn mower started up. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. Yet inside that house, the atmosphere felt increasingly strange. Logan looked irritated now. Not angry. Not yet. Just irritated. The way people get when reality refuses to follow the script they wrote in their heads. Then a knock sounded at the front door. 3 slow knocks. Danielle glanced toward the entryway. For the first time all morning, something in her expression shifted. Not fear. Not surprise. More like recognition. Excuse me, she said. She walked past them and opened the door. A man stood outside. Mid-60s. Gray suit. Silver hair. Expensive watch. The kind of person who carried himself quietly, but somehow filled the entire space around him. Good morning, Ms. Brooks, he said. Sorry I am a few minutes late. Danielle smiled. You are right on time, Walter. Walter stepped inside. Logan immediately frowned. Who is this? Walter calmly removed a pair of reading glasses from his jacket pocket. Walter Grayson. He extended a hand. Logan did not take it. Walter did not seem bothered. People who are truly confident rarely are. Danielle returned to the dining room, while Walter placed a leather folder on the table. The lawyer looked at it, then looked at Walter. Something flashed across his face. Recognition. Not complete recognition. Just enough to make him uneasy. I know your name, the lawyer said carefully. Walter nodded. Many people do. Logan glanced between them. What is this? Nobody answered immediately. I have always found that silence can be louder than shouting. And right then, the silence in that room felt very loud. Walter finally opened the folder and removed several documents. Before any discussion continues, he said, there are a few items we need to clarify. Logan laughed softly. Clarify what? Walter slid the papers across the table. Ownership history. Logan barely looked at them. The ownership history is already documented. Not completely, Walter replied. That answer wiped the smile from Logan's face. The lawyer picked up the first page. As he read, the color slowly drained from his expression. He flipped to the second page. Then the third. Logan noticed it immediately. What is it? He asked. The lawyer did not answer. He kept reading. Danielle quietly picked up her coffee and sat down for the first time all morning. She looked completely relaxed, almost comfortable. Logan turned toward her. What is going on? Danielle met his eyes. You came here believing you knew the whole story. Walter closed the folder. Mr. Mercer, he said calmly, that may have been your first mistake. And for the first time since arriving, Logan looked like a man who was no longer certain he was in control of the room. Logan pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. The confidence was still there, but it was not as steady as before. His lawyer continued studying the documents Walter had brought, flipping pages back and forth as though he hoped something would change if he looked hard enough. It did not. Walter remained calm. He folded his hands on the table and looked toward Danielle. Would you like me to explain? Danielle nodded once. Go ahead. Logan let out a short laugh. Explain what? You are acting like you discovered some hidden treasure. Walter ignored the comment. 3 years ago, during the divorce proceedings, several business assets were presented as solely belonging to Mr. Mercer. Logan immediately leaned forward. Because they did belong to me. Walter opened another file. That depends on how you define ownership. The room became quiet again. Danielle watched without saying a word. There was something different about her now. Not stronger. She had always been strong, just less willing to hide it. Walter slid a document toward Logan. Do you remember Mercer Growth Solutions? Logan frowned. Of course I do. Who created the original operating model? Logan rolled his eyes. I built that company. Walter tilted his head slightly. That was not my question. Logan looked irritated. What is this supposed to prove? Walter tapped the paper. The original operating structure, distribution system, and expansion plan were drafted 6 years before launch. Logan said nothing. Walter continued. Every version was created on a computer registered to Danielle Brooks. The lawyer finally looked up. Is that true? Logan shifted in his seat. She helped organize notes. That does not mean anything. Walter calmly produced another document. Then another. Then another. Meeting records. Email drafts. Planning notes. Development timelines. Danielle recognized every one of them. She remembered long nights at the kitchen table. Cheap takeout containers. Cold coffee. Pages spread across the floor while Logan talked about becoming successful someday. Back then she believed they were building a future together. Funny how memory changes when you finally see people clearly. Danielle never asked for credit, Walter said. That does not mean the contribution disappeared. Logan's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. Danielle finally spoke. Is it? Logan looked at her. You are really doing this? She almost smiled. Doing what? Trying to rewrite history. Danielle shook her head. No, Logan. History is exactly the problem. For a moment, neither looked away. Then Walter opened one final folder. Even the lawyer seemed interested now. There is one more item. Logan sighed heavily. What now? Walter slid a single sheet across the table. The lawyer picked it up first. His eyes moved down the page. Then stopped. Completely stopped. Logan noticed immediately. What is it? The lawyer swallowed. I think you need to see this. Logan grabbed the document. His expression changed almost instantly. Not dramatically, just enough. The kind of reaction people have when they discover a piece of information they were never supposed to miss. Danielle watched carefully. She had waited a long time for that look. Walter stood and adjusted his jacket. Mr. Mercer, he said quietly. Before today, you believe this house was the most important asset connected to your former marriage. Logan slowly lowered the paper. Walter nodded toward the document in his hands. It is not. And for the first time all morning, Logan looked genuinely worried. Logan stared at the document for several seconds without speaking. The lawyer reached for it again, but Logan kept holding it. His eyes moved across the page a second time, as if he hoped the words would somehow rearrange themselves. They did not. Danielle could tell exactly when the realization started settling in. Not completely, just enough to make him uncomfortable. This cannot be right, Logan finally said. Walter remained calm. It has been verified multiple times. Logan looked at his lawyer. Tell me this is wrong. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and carefully reviewed the page again. The longer he read, the less confident he looked. I cannot say it is wrong. That answer landed harder than either of them expected. Logan stood up and paced toward the living room. The floorboards creaked beneath his shoes. Outside, clouds had started gathering overhead. The bright morning had faded into one of those dull afternoons that seemed to slow everything down. Danielle sat quietly, watching. Years ago, she would have felt nervous in moments like this. Back then, whenever Logan became frustrated, she felt responsible for fixing the situation. Now she simply observed. It was surprisingly peaceful. Logan stopped near the fireplace and turned around. You knew about this? Danielle nodded. For a while. How long? Long enough. His jaw tightened. And you said nothing? Danielle looked directly at him. You never asked. Walter almost smiled at that. Logan did not. This is ridiculous. He walked back toward the table. You were talking about paperwork from years ago. Not exactly, Walter said. He opened another folder. What concerns us is not the paperwork from years ago. It is what happened afterward. The lawyer immediately paid attention. That sentence caught his interest. Logan noticed. What happened afterward? Walter slid several pages across the table. Financial reports. Transaction summaries. Ownership disclosures. Nothing dramatic to look at. Yet the lawyer's expression changed almost immediately. Oh, it was a small word. But sometimes small words carry enormous weight. Logan grabbed the documents. What now? The lawyer hesitated. There appear to be assets that were never disclosed during the divorce process. Logan looked annoyed. That is impossible. Walter calmly pointed to the reports. The records disagree. The room fell silent again. Danielle watched Logan scan the pages faster and faster. His confidence was beginning to crack. Not completely. Men like Logan rarely give up confidence all at once. It usually breaks in pieces. First comes irritation, then doubt, then worry. He had already reached the second stage. You were saying I had assets, he asked. Walter folded his hands. I am saying the records show assets existed that were not included in the final disclosures. Logan looked toward his lawyer. The lawyer did not answer immediately. That silence was answer enough. Danielle picked up her coffee mug. It had gone cold an hour ago, but she did not seem to mind. Logan stared at her. You planned this. Danielle set the mug down. No. Then why do you seem so calm? For the first time all afternoon, her smile returned. Small, quiet, controlled. Because this meeting is going exactly the way I expected. Logan felt something shift beneath him. Not physically, mentally. The uncomfortable feeling that comes when you realize somebody else has been 3 steps ahead of you the entire time. Then Walter opened one final envelope and placed it carefully on the table. Actually, he said, we have not reached the important part yet. And the moment Logan saw the name printed across the top page, the color disappeared from his face. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Logan kept staring at the name on the document, as if he had seen a ghost. Walter did not rush him. Danielle did not say a word. Even the lawyer seemed unsure whether to speak. Finally, Logan looked up. How is this possible? Walter leaned back slightly. That is usually the first question people ask. Logan placed the paper on the table. This account was closed. No, Walter replied. You assumed it was closed. The lawyer reached for the document and reviewed it carefully. The account had not been closed. It had been transferred. That was very different. Logan rubbed a hand across his face. The confidence he arrived with was almost gone now. In its place was something far less comfortable. Uncertainty. Danielle had seen that look before. Usually it appeared when Logan walked into a meeting without having all the facts. He hated surprises. Always had. You knew about this the entire time? He asked her. Danielle nodded. Not the entire time. How long? She thought about it for a moment. About 3 years. Logan laughed once. There was no humor in it. 3 years. Danielle set her coffee mug in the sink and turned back toward him. You remember the day the divorce was finalized? Of course I do. I do too. Her voice remained calm. You spent 2 hours explaining why everything belonged to you. Logan looked away. Danielle continued. You explained why the company was yours. Why the investments were yours. Why the future was yours. Walter watched quietly. So did the lawyer. Danielle folded her arms. Do you know what I remember most? Logan did not answer. You never once asked what I knew. The room became still again. Outside, rain had started tapping softly against the windows. The sound filled the silence. Walter opened another folder and removed several pages. The transfer occurred 6 weeks after the divorce. Logan looked down. He already knew what Walter was about to say. That made it worse. The beneficiary designation remained active. The lawyer slowly lowered the papers. She was still listed. Walter nodded. Correct. Logan closed his eyes briefly. A mistake. One overlooked detail. One signature never updated. One assumption made years ago. Sometimes entire lives change because somebody skips a line in a document. Danielle walked toward the window. I spent a long time waiting for you to come back. Logan frowned. Waiting? She nodded. Not because I wanted you back. Her reflection stared out through the glass. Because I knew eventually you would come looking for something. Logan felt a chill run through him. Danielle turned around. Her smile returned. Small, calm, unshaken. The same smile that had bothered him from the moment he arrived. The funny part is that you thought you came here to take something from me. Walter closed the folder. Mr. Mercer, he said quietly. The reality may be exactly the opposite. And for the first time that day, Logan looked less like a businessman negotiating a deal and more like a man realizing he had walked into a situation he did not understand at all. The rain outside grew steadier. Small drops slid down the front window, blurring the view of the street. Nobody seemed interested in leaving anymore. Not Logan. Not his lawyer. They had come expecting a quick victory. Now they were sitting in a house they thought they could take, listening to a story they never saw coming. Logan slowly lowered himself into a chair. Tell me exactly what this means. Walter glanced at Danielle before answering. It means the account is not the asset you should be worried about. Logan let out a frustrated breath, then stopped talking in riddles. Walter opened another folder. This one was thicker than the others. Several pages were marked with colored tabs. The lawyer immediately leaned forward. He knew something important was coming. Walter slid the folder across the table. Mercer Strategic Holdings. Logan frowned. What about it? Who owns 12%? Logan barely looked at the page. Several investment groups. Walter nodded. And one private trust. That got his attention. Logan picked up the report. His eyes moved down the ownership list. Then stopped. Completely stopped. The room became silent. Danielle watched him carefully. 3 years ago, she would have looked away. Not anymore. Logan read the line again. Then a third time. No. Walter folded his hands. Yes. Logan looked at his lawyer. This is impossible. The lawyer took the report and read it himself. A few seconds later, he leaned back in his chair. He looked exhausted all of a sudden. I do not think it is impossible. Logan stood so quickly the chair nearly tipped over. That trust was never supposed to have voting authority. Walter remained calm. It acquired voting authority 18 months ago. How? Walter gave a small shrug. Legally. Danielle walked toward the bookshelf near the fireplace. She pulled out a framed photograph and dusted it with her thumb. It was an old picture from years ago, a reminder of a different life. You always hated details, she said quietly. Logan looked at her. What did you do? Danielle set the photograph back in place. I paid attention. That answer only made him angrier. You knew this would happen. She nodded. Eventually. Logan stared at her. The confidence was gone now. Completely gone. In its place was something much harder to hide. Fear. Not fear of Danielle. Fear of consequences. Fear of realizing that decisions made years ago were finally catching up with him. Walter pointed to another section of the report. If the trust exercises its authority, several pending board actions could be affected. The lawyer's face tightened immediately. He understood what that meant. Logan understood too. You cannot be serious. Walter met his eyes. I am very serious. Danielle sat down across from him. For the first time all afternoon, she looked completely relaxed. You came here for a house, she said. You never even noticed the building behind it. Logan swallowed hard. The rain tapped against the windows. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Walter closed the folder and delivered the sentence Logan had been dreading since the moment he arrived. Mr. Mercer, if Danielle chooses to act, she may have more influence over your future than you do. Logan slowly sat back down. The fight seemed to leave his shoulders all at once. Not completely, but enough for everyone in the room to notice. His lawyer closed the folder and rubbed his forehead. Nobody looked eager to continue arguing anymore. The facts were sitting on the table, and facts have a way of ending debates. The rain outside had turned steady now, drumming softly against the windows. Danielle glanced toward the clock. It was almost 4 in the afternoon. Somehow the day had slipped away. Logan stared at the documents for a long moment before finally speaking. What do you want? Walter looked toward Danielle. This was her conversation now. Danielle folded her hands together. That is the first smart question you have asked all day. Logan did not react. 3 years ago, he would have fired back immediately. Today he just waited. Danielle noticed that too. I do not want your company, she said. I do not want your house. I do not want your money. Logan frowned. Then why do all this? Danielle almost laughed. You still do not understand. She stood and walked toward the bookshelf again. Her fingers brushed across old photographs, old memories. Some were good. Most were complicated. You think this is about revenge? Logan looked down. He did think that. Danielle turned back toward him. It is not. The room stayed quiet. Even Walter seemed interested in what she would say next. When we got divorced, you spent months convincing everyone that I was the problem. Logan lowered his eyes. Danielle continued. You told people I was holding you back. You told people I never understood business. You told people success only started after I was gone. Nobody interrupted her. For a while I wanted to defend myself. She smiled slightly. Then I realized something. Logan looked up. What? Danielle shrugged. The truth does not need marketing. That sentence hit harder than any argument could have. Logan looked away again. For the first time all day, he seemed tired. Not physically, emotionally, like somebody carrying a weight they had been pretending was not there. Walter quietly gathered several documents into a neat stack. The lawyer remained silent. He knew where this was heading. Logan finally spoke. What happens now? Danielle sat back down across from him. That depends on you. On me. She nodded. You came here trying to take something that was never yours. Logan closed his eyes briefly. Danielle continued. You can leave today and spend the next year fighting this. Or you can accept reality. Another long silence followed. The rain continued tapping against the glass. Somewhere outside a car drove past. Ordinary life moving forward while everything inside that room seemed frozen. Then Logan looked directly at Danielle. If I walk away from the house, what happens to the trust? Walter remained quiet. Danielle answered herself. Nothing. Logan blinked. Nothing. Nothing. His expression shifted again. Confusion this time. Danielle gave a small smile. Because despite what you believe, I never built my future around destroying yours. Logan stared at her. He had spent years assuming the worst about her. In that moment, he finally realized how wrong he had been. Then Danielle reached across the table, slid one final document toward him, and said, The decision is yours. But before you sign anything, there is one more thing you need to know. Logan looked down at the document Danielle had placed in front of him. It was only a single page. No complicated legal language. No hidden clauses. Just a simple agreement. Walter had already reviewed it. So had the lawyer. Logan picked it up and read it carefully. Then he read it again. His shoulders slowly relaxed. This is it, he asked. Danielle nodded. That is it. Logan looked confused. You could have asked for a lot more. Danielle smiled. I know. The rain outside had finally started slowing down. Sunlight was beginning to push through the clouds, casting pale streaks across the living room floor. The whole house felt different now. Lighter somehow. The tension that had filled every corner of the room earlier was starting to disappear. Logan stared at Danielle for a long moment. Why? She leaned back in her chair. Because I stopped measuring my future by what happened in my past. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Walter quietly gathered the remaining files. The lawyer closed his briefcase. The fight was over before it ever reached a courtroom. Logan looked around the house one last time. 3 years ago, he had walked away believing he was taking everything that mattered with him. Looking back now, he realized how wrong he had been. The house was still standing. Danielle was still standing. In fact, she seemed stronger than she had ever been. Not because she won. Not because he lost. Because she had moved forward while he stayed stuck looking backward. Logan signed the document and slid it across the table. I suppose this means the house stays yours. Danielle glanced at the signature. The house was never the important part. A small smile appeared on Logan's face. Not arrogant. Not defensive. Just honest. Maybe for the first time in years. You know, he said, I used to think you needed me to succeed. Danielle laughed softly. I know. Logan shook his head. Turns out I had that backward. Walter stood and slipped on his coat. That realization usually arrives later than people expect. Everyone smiled at that. Even the lawyer. Logan rose from his chair and walked toward the front door. He stopped before leaving. For a moment, it looked like he wanted to say something else. Maybe an apology. Maybe an explanation. Sometimes people search for perfect words when there are none. Finally, he nodded. Take care of yourself, Danielle. She nodded back. You too, Logan. Then he stepped outside. The driveway that had seemed so certain when he arrived felt very different now. He got into the black SUV and drove away without looking back. Danielle stood by the window and watched until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. Then she let out a long breath she did not even realize she had been holding. Walter walked over. "How do you feel?" Danielle thought about it. "Peaceful." Walter smiled. "That is worth more than any asset." After he left, the house became quiet again. Just the ticking clock, the faint smell of coffee, the soft sunlight filling the room. Danielle looked around and smiled. Not because she had defeated someone, not because she had proven anything, because she was finally free from a chapter that had ended years ago. And maybe that is the real lesson. In everyday life, people often spend too much time trying to win against someone who hurt them. But real growth happens when you stop building your future around old battles. Success is not always getting even. Sometimes success is becoming the person you were meant to be after everything falls apart. Danielle understood that now. She picked up her coffee mug, walked into the kitchen, and started planning tomorrow. Not because the story was ending, because her new life had already begun.